If I could have your attention, please. I'd like to welcome you to this City Council workshop this Thursday, January the 30th. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with our roll call.
Mayor Blackwell.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Here.
Councilmember Cooper.
Here.
Councilmember Askew. Councilmember Trace.
Here.
First item on our agenda is discussion of the Lakefront Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a workshop to discuss two items, the Lakefront Refinement Plan and the Waterfront Master Plan. This, if you recall, when we first adopted Envision St. Cloud almost 2 years now, you asked us to go back and look at some revisions and refinements to the Lakefront Park plan. And so we went ahead and started that process. And in addition to that, we also engaged GAI Community Solutions Group to also work on the Waterfront Master Plan, which encompasses the entire lakefront along Lakeshore. And we also did an economic analysis as well. We have the consultants here, and they'll introduce themselves, and they'll walk you through the whole concept from the Envision St. Cloud and leading into this whole effort.
Great. Can you all hear me? Okay, great.
Yes,
Thanks, Mr. Anderson. My name is Kristen Caborn. I'm the Director of Park Planning at GAI Consultants. I'm probably a familiar face to y'all. Thank you again for having us tonight. With me, I have Andrea Penuela. She's a landscape designer with us, and Keith Orpeza, who is he was a director of landscape architecture in our group. And together, we are responsible for the plan. I just want to run you really quickly through the master planning process that we did to come to the concept plans that we're going to be going through with you tonight. The first thing that we did was look at the site. We walked the site. We've been there before, obviously. We worked on the Envision St. Cloud plan, and we're able to build off the input that we received as part of the Envision St. Cloud plan. But we wanted to take a deeper dive into the actual physical opportunities and constraints of the site. The Envision St. Cloud plan was a vision. Now we were starting to put it together and put some feasibility behind it. From there, we had a series of public meetings. We had them on site in the Lakefront building up on the second floor, where we talked about the potential program activities that could go on out at the Lakefront. We had different activities around the room where participants could come and look at potential ideas and inspiration for theming and for amenities to be both at the Lakefront and the waterfront, and we were able to get their input. And I do just want to back up a little bit for clarification. When we talk about lakefront and waterfront, Lakefront Park is what we would consider to be the heart of the park. So it's where the marina is, where the building is, where your existing splash pad and playground and beach is. So when we talk about lakefront, that's what we mean. When we talk about waterfront, we talk about the east and west extents outside of the heart of the main park. So I just want to make sure I was clear on that. From there, we began doing a couple of different iterations of the conceptual master plan, and then we created the final master plan, which is what we're going to be presenting to you tonight. So some of the key points that came out of the Envision St. Cloud plan that influenced what we are doing now is that parking is undersized and poorly circulated. So the lakefront property is, of course, very valuable. So we know it's not feasible to solve all the parking challenges on the north side of the drive. So we wanted to make sure that we started to look at that. Dan Terrell Memorial Point provides value and could be enhanced. It is right now a long walk to get out there, and it's not necessarily the most friendly walk, so we want to take a look at that. The trail is an asset. It's very heavily used, especially in the evenings. I don't need to tell you all that, but it is a huge asset and very, very well embraced by the community. Obviously, the marina is a great amenity, and there was some expressed interest in expanding the capacity of the marina, if at all possible. That does present some potential future permitting challenges, but something that could be explored. The seaplane base, I think everybody has heard some talk about that, but comparing St. Cloud with, for instance, Tavares and some of the other cities around Central Florida that could be characterized as character towns who do enjoy some economic development for their waterfront by having a seaplane base. So we looked into that a little bit more. The multi-purpose lawn right now that's currently on the east side of where the boat ramps are is not well integrated into the site. It really has served as a place where the Orlando Philharmonic set up in the past and to have those events, but it seems like it's now a little bit disjointed from the way the rest of the park is functioning. And then, of course, pedestrian crossings could be improved quite a bit to enhance the safety. The speed limit, I believe, is 30 miles per hour, but right now it is, you can certainly catch people going a little bit faster than that. So we wanted to take a look at pedestrian safety and how we can improve that. So some of the ideas that came out of public input were to capitalize on the nature experience. We heard quite a bit about that, and especially when it relates to birds and the diversity of the bird species that do come into the lakefront. Increase the safety of pedestrians and cyclists alike. And right now you have a nice wide trail that's well used, but how can we deal with the conflicts between people on foot and people on wheels? So we took a look at that, and then of course how that interfaces with people behind wheels. Increase the comfort along the walks with shade and seating. Right now you've got very long stretches of the multi-use trail where there's not a lot of shade and not a lot of rest areas. And then also there are some conflicts between boats and jet skis and vegetation, because jet skis will pull up where they want to pull up, and we want to be able to.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Council, please.
Do I have 3 minutes left?
She couldn't see.
We want to make sure that we can begin to resolve those user conflicts and make it safer and more functional for everybody. So here's Keith's sketches as he started to look at different arrangements of spaces and how things would start to come together. We do a lot of sketching and playing around on bum wad paper and on top of the aerial and taking the program elements and seeing how they fit together. And then here is the concept development. I do want to mention this is very small in a PowerPoint. We do have 11 by 17s printed. Stephanie can hand them out if y'all would like to be able to refer down to an 11 by 17 while we're talking. Sure.
Sure.
Okay. And of course, the big boards are in the atrium, the foyer of the chambers. So one of the things that we've done that is a little bit different from a typical master planning process is we do have economics staff and economists as part of our community solutions group. So we've begun to start to look at some of the potential economic development that could occur down at the lakefront. It's just a preliminary scan, but what we did, and the purposes of that was to give us some physical square footage for planning some facilities that could potentially go on down there. And I actually cannot read that either. So I'm going to skip ahead because don't we have that in the presentation? Okay. So the economic opportunities include a civic event venue, a hotel or inn, a retail space, and then a total retail / restaurant space, and then of course the seaplane base. So those are the things that we did our preliminary scan on, and that helped to develop the looking at what a square footage might look like, so we could use that in the physical site planning. It's not developed beyond that, other than that what seemed to be feasible to go down there based on the size of the site, the functioning of the site, and keeping, of course, in character with the neighborhood. So looking at the economic development overlay, we came up with 2 different potential options. Again, these are taking place at the lakefront portion of the site, just to the west of where the existing marina and the boat ramp parking are. We've got 2, let's see, I guess if I use the laser pointer, it's not going to show up on the screen, on the screens. But we've got the 2 different overlays here that have different configurations, and I'm actually going to let Keith talk to you a little bit more about these specifically and how that starts to play in, and then we'll get into some of the key improvements for the overall vision.
Great, thank you. Why don't you go back to that?
Yep.
So the draft, the one you see where it says draft underneath it, we looked at what would happen, keeping the boat ramp into play right there, and how do we bring into play a hotel, a civic building, some retail, and make that all work within that small envelope there. So and realizing you're short on parking, so we looked at the idea of a boat loop behind all that, and then a new ramp being built, and then the point heading off to where I think it's labeled seaplane, potential seaplane dock or base there. It was a little congested. There was a lot of conflicts there. We weren't real happy with it, so we moved on to another venue here and looked at working all that within the existing framework of the boat ramp, as it were. So we came up with two, again, putting the Civic Center and the retail and the hotel component in there. This was all an evolution process that ended up with the master plan you're seeing here. So these are the first two steps that took us through that. Now, so on a big movement here, looking broad scale, some of the major things we heard at the stakeholder meetings and was very clear was jet skis and boats were a real concern out there. So when we looked at the marina area, realizing the value of that real estate, and a large portion of that is given up to parking and to a boat ramp, how can we enhance the value of that property there and make that a better, more active, integrated space there? So in this large movement, we looked at pulling the boat ramp out of there and shifting it all the way to the west. So that would then now
So
have...
it's coming out here.
The marina
It's going
stays there.
all the way here.
The marina stays in play, but the boat ramp moves. So you can still come to the marina, take advantage of all the activities that are going on there. We then move the jet skis to their own individual ramp that's over on the other side of the beach. So these two now are not mixing at that point here. And then we've enhanced that whole marina area and taking all that conflict out of play there. If you want to move this to the next one. So here's the boat ramp at the very end. And it also serves as sort of a trailhead at each end. We bookend the park at each end. We've got at the opposite end parking there. This is would be enhanced with restrooms, the boat ramp, and then also sort of a trailhead heading into the park. And we can talk more about what we've done along the retention ponds as well as we move through it. Here, in this case here, what we've done on the retention ponds is how can we take an engineered solution and soften that up a bit. So what we're looking at doing is creating boardwalks along there, places to cross intermittently, so you don't have to walk 2 miles if you don't want to. You can come back and forth and go back and forth across the way there. And then actually landscape it with native landscaping on the lake side, as you see right there.
Yeah, we know that a lot of people are walking the berm on the lakeside right now, but the reality is if you get on that berm, you've got a big commitment of staying on that berm because there's nowhere to cross until you get to either the center or to one of the ends. So that was something that we heard that people really wanted an escape route, if you will.
And instead of having just a straight shot of a walk across the berm there, we've cut it, we've taken boardwalks out into the lake, then we bring you back along the top there, then you go back out of the lake. So it can be an educational component. It just gets you out into the lake a little more nature as opposed to just an engineered feature along there. But then again, we don't end up having to re-engineer and redesign an entire retention system.
And it also provides some ADA accessibility that's not
Absolutely.
available on that side of the retention ponds now.
And then on the roadway side, we look at providing more of those shaded nooks that happen right now. There's a couple spaces to the east side where you have some really wonderful oak trees and people tend to gather there. So if we can provide a number of those along the way, dog park, some other program elements that are played in there, I think it'll be a real active, it's already active, but it'll really activate it significantly more.
So since this is a workshop, do y'all want us to stop? Do you want to ask questions on this section, or should we go through the whole presentation and then back up? What's your pleasure?
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a bunch, but I can wait till the end. I can wait till the end.
We'll wait to the end, okay?
Okay, absolutely.
This is the enlargement of the marina area. As you can see, we have now enhanced parking. We've got a small boutique kind of hotel and retail component associated with that, and right there, and then a civic building to the west. Then we kept the more active components like the restaurant and a new function lawn. So there's a good association right between those two there where you can have catering back and forth, whether it be concerts or wine tasting events. And then we're enhancing the Memorial Walk as well. Not only have an element out there that you arrive at a shaded structure, but also enhance the walk along there. The beach is still in play. You've got a great beach. It gets a lot of use. I've watched it on many a Saturday, and we've enhanced some of the parking on the eastern end there to allow for the jet skis to park there and really stay over in that area where they're docking and they're messing around, as opposed to being in the boat ramp area and causing conflict in there.
The other thing we want to talk about is the cycle track on the road. Separating out the pedestrians and the ones who are walking on the sidewalk versus the bikes is something that probably needs to be studied a little bit further with traffic counts, but you have the right-of-way width down along Lakeshore Boulevard to potentially put in a cycle track. Whether or not it goes on the north side of the road or the south side of the road is something that will have to be considered again once you get into a little bit more design with some more feasibility, but we are looking at that so we can get the people who are riding fast off the sidewalk, but then we also, there's pros and cons to both. If you're on the south side of the road, you're dealing with all the driveway cuts. If you're on the north side of the road, you're conflicting potentially with the parallel parking. So that is something that will be looked at and will have to be continued to be looked at before a definitive solution comes around. So we already went through a little bit about the economic driver, just some of the square footages to give you an idea. Y'all may be able to see this on your screen, but the public probably can't. So the civic event venue is focusing on small and local occasional regional events, about 15,000 to 20,000 square feet with the potential to maybe expand to 30,000 square feet with some outdoor space. A hotel or inn, the maximum of 10,000 square feet, oriented to weekend and limited midweek travel, 10 to 15 rooms. Retail space, 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, individual tenants between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet each. Restaurant space, 7,000 to 10,000 square feet at build-out 1 or 2 restaurant spaces maximum. And then your total retail restaurant space would be 20,000 square feet maximum with an estimated total not to exceed the 20,000 square feet. And then the seaplane base to support what is out in the water as a landing strip would be about 500 to 700 square feet to ultimately include docks, tie downs, ramp, fuel, and an administrative building. And again, those are not fully flushed out, but we needed to have somewhere to start with potential square footages for physical planning purposes. So that's where that is right now on the plan. So looking at the lakefront vision and, of course, keeping St. Cloud residents in mind and knowing that this park really is the heart of the community. Some of what we looked at was, of course, having a nice separated family zone with a splash pad and playground that really is a great destination for people to be able to walk to and be able to utilize that, trying again to get some of the cars off. And then Keith, if you want to run through again, I think we've really already covered most of it. But
most of it's there. The components that are in play that are well received, of course, the splash pad and the restaurant and the association. So we want to keep those areas there. But we also wanted to make sure this was multifunctional. You can have multiple events going on at one time if that's the case. If the event lawn is in play with a big event going on, but residents may not be interested in that, but they want to bring their kids out and play in the splash pad. We have 2 different areas, but it's close proximity, so you can go back and forth between the 2. So that's why we separated those 2 areas out. We think it allows for multiple things to go on at one time as opposed to just programming one thing and shutting it down. We allowed for a lot more parking with that splash pad, so if you are driving from somewhere as opposed to just walking, there's a significant amount of parking right there as opposed to just what's happening on the street or the small parking that was happening at the restaurant in place right now. So that kind of would get backed up a lot. So we're trying to accommodate that. The on-street parking is good, and we kept that into place as far as that goes. And then added additional parking down the east side by the new jet ski ramp.
one of the really great things about this is the arrangement of what I want to call puzzle pieces or the different amenities that are going on down there, because we realize that although there are a lot of special events that take place on your lakefront, it is still a park, and it truly is a park for the residents of St. Cloud. So every puzzle piece is purposely placed to function not only for your special events and help improve that functioning, but also function on a day-to-day basis. So if you have families coming down to use the beach and to swim in this area, you've already got it buoyed off where no motorized boats can come in here. So we're honoring that and keeping it very safe, but we've also got wonderful open space associated with the beach now, where you don't have it right now. When you come off the beach, you're really, and get to the splash pad and the playground, you're in the parking lot. There's not a lot of space to be able to fly a kite or run, just run in open space. So we wanted to make sure that we have it as a nice functioning park with relationships of spaces on a day-to-day basis. So going through the cost.
This is high level, at a concept level, we've made a lot of assumptions in here and tend to plug in higher numbers. Not that I'm saying it's real conservative, but again, there are other things that may come into play ultimately that we're not aware of at this point, but we did our best swag at this based on the information we had and what we've shown on the drawings.
So for the waterfront, again, these are the east and west extents outside of the main marina, Lakefront Park area. The site work, the dog park, nature trails, trailheads, canopies and shade, and comfortable seating, $6.5 million. The economic development portion, which is just on the west side of the existing marina, the relocated boat ramp and the regrading of the stormwater system, $1.8 million. Again, that is obviously not the cost of the buildings, because that would be explored. The city's probably not going to get into the hotel business and the restaurant business. So that's not the vertical construction, if you will. And that brings you to a grand total of $8.3 million. And then looking at the Lakefront Park site work, expanded parking, the amphitheater lawn, which is the area that's adjacent to the beach that we were just talking about, enhancements to Dan Terrell Memorial Point, the jet ski area, kayak area, the separated sidewalk and cycle track, we get to $9.2 million. And then the seaplane dock and the site work associated with the economic development in that part of the park is $2.2 million, bringing the lakefront to $11.4 million. And that is the end of the presentation.
Now. Now.
All right. Ms. Matheny.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the master plan. I think there's a lot of good ideas in here. A lot of hard work went into it, I know. I think one of the first steps is just to get it on paper, and then we can all kind of tweak and make adjustments and stuff, so I appreciate it. I guess I'll hit my high-level things first. One of my big concerns when I looked at this master plan is the beach area was cut in half. And I think that's one of our differentiating characteristics of the lakefront. I love the beachy area. Who else, like the city of Kissimmee doesn't have a beach area that they can go to. And we basically cut it in half. So that's something I don't like. I would like us to try to do innovative ideas, maybe see if there's some tweaks that could be made to the stormwater pond. I don't know if there's extra capacity in the ponds, or maybe put retaining walls or do something. I mean, that was a big no for me, was that the beach got cut in half. And then I'll just kind of go down my list that I have. Sure. So since I've been on council, there's been a lot of conversation about Lakeshore Boulevard and the speed of people going down Lakeshore Boulevard and ideas. And I know I've talked to the city manager about it before. And could we look at ways to do some innovative designs down there so it's not like a straight runway down the frontage, maybe like separate the lanes and put some plantings and do some things. So I'm concerned when I look at this that if we go and put all these street trees, are we kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot to look at a road design, because we do have plenty of right-of-way, especially on the west side.
And one of the things that you can't see from this plan is, and Kristen mentioned, was the intersection improvements. What we want to do in those cases where we can is tabletop those intersections there. So where the intersection is raised and it's a pedestrian-friendly section there. So the cars do have to slow unless they want to bottom out and
Sure.
So
I was thinking meandering the lanes,
absolutely.
And doing things like that.
Those are all other possibilities, as long as we don't get into obviously right away on the other side, private property. But we can explore.
I just don't want to do anything that would prevent us from looking at that in the future. The landscaping along the trail, I'm all about shade. I can't be outside for more than 5 minutes without being sunburned. I know this is just a master plan, but I found the landscaping to be pretty boring. It just looks like a tree on a 100-foot center, along the side. I'm hoping when it gets down into further design, that there would be more interesting
Absolutely. Sure.
landscaping. I know it had a note in here about additional crossings across Lakeshore, which that's something we desperately need. The dog park, to me, looks like teensy tiny. Like, I just don't know that that's an efficient use either. Maybe only put a sidewalk on one side of it, but then, and also I'm thinking, do you really want to have all these animals congregating right next to a road that, like you mentioned, people drive over the speed limit, and what if a dog is loose? It just seemed really tiny to me, like maybe not the best place to put that. In your budget, I know it's really high level budget, but in the master plan, we are going to like redo the trail, right?
The one that's on the south side, not necessarily completely redoing it.
Because I know it's seen some better days. I personally have fallen on that trail because I stepped in a gouge that I didn't see. And
This didn't include repaving from
Right.
one end to the other. It was improving it in front of the marina area and then providing pedestrian overlooks along the way there. But as far as taking that all up and re-asphalting it, that was not part of that, those numbers there.
yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to go spend all this money, you probably want to maybe mill and resurface the trail and make that all look better.
We'll add that in for sure.
One of my big pet peeves that I have at our lakefront now, sorry, I told you I forgot my notes, I had to go get them. One of my big pet peeves I have now is we have this beautiful lake and there's nowhere to sit really and enjoy the lake. You know, I know we have Krabby Bills, but the restaurant is on the ground floor. When you sit outside, I got to look through multiple railings. I got to look through the boats. I got to, you know, there's really no place that you can really get up and, you know, like, wouldn't that be amazing? Like, get up at the top and, like, have, like, dinner and look out over the lake or do something. So when I saw the hotel and it's up on Lakeshore, it's not out on the lake, I'm like, oh, great. So these hotel rooms are going to look down on a parking lot and retail. You know, like, why isn't it, you know, pushed on the lake? I would like to see somewhere that you
Well,
could
there's two things that
enjoy
drive
the
that,
lake.
just from visibility from roadside, you know, in terms of drive-by, and retailers tend to prefer to have everything towards their street end in terms of saleability. And if we're up several stories and you're on the lakefront, you're actually looking over all that. So that was the thought process that happens there. We did, on for instance, the Point, do a lot of redoing all that in terms of seating out there along there, as well as around the lawn area. The intent was to do a lot of, again, passive seating and shade structures along the edges there that would allow for that. So, but I understand what you're saying about getting closer to the lake. But that was our thought process that we used in this, whether that can be rethought or there's a better option. And I think once we take it more seriously and there may be an operator in play, those kinds of things, say we need to have this kind of thing happen, and this is a better location for us, so it's successful. So we can have those discussions. And again, this is a master plan. It's
Sure.
fluid. It's living. They move around and change as you move forward and things come into play.
Because I've even asked the question before, and I was told we couldn't do it, but the building that Krabby Bill's is in, I was like, can we, like, put a rooftop, like, bar or restaurant in there?
Sure.
But I've been told no, that the building can't handle that. But I don't know that that's an official. But I'm like, wouldn't that be great if you could do something to, like, look out over the water?
One other thing, just to address seating, because we are very, agree with you on the access to the water feels very restricted now. On the boardwalks, and this is a lot of the reason why we thought it was important to have mid-block, mid-pond crossing, if you will, was to be able to get people across here, but also have purpose of these boardwalks is to have observation areas there. So you are out over the water now, coming off the berm, going north into the lake, and being able to sit and feel closer to the water there. So hopefully we're starting to address some of the feeling of the disconnect from people to their waterfront.
Yeah, I like the boardwalk. I thought that was a great idea. Dan Terrell Point. I've spent a lot of time actually out on Dan Terrell Point, and my one comment would be like, it's so great out there, but the pavilion's in the center. So like if you wanted to go have a wedding there, let's say, Then the guy comes along riding his bike with his boom box and gets in between you and the lake, or, they're fishing, or, like, it would be nice if it was like up on the edge so that you could have some piece of it if you wanted to have some kind of
Absolutely.
event there.
And that can be relocated or located anywhere, but the idea was to bring an observation tower out there as well.
Yeah.
So you can go up there and it serves almost as a lighthouse or a beacon in some way from the lakeside coming in as well. So it's there's the marina over there. When you get across the lake, sometimes, especially at night, it'd be nice to have something.
Yeah, I think too, like if there could be some portion that's, restrained from people like
Yeah,
walking
yeah.
through, because I just think, oh, like this is so pretty, but then I just see some crazy
And
stuff out there.
That's a great idea, and as those things, each of these things start to happen, and we get into the detailed design and understand the program of what's going to happen there, then we can locate those things tight. And it's noted, I noted, the concern here that
Okay.
when we really start to design it, we can get those things figured out.
And it is kind of a lonely walk out there, you're right. Like
It's a
when
lo-
you do, it's a lonely, lonely walk. The other two things were just kind of like thoughts, like, should we try to do a theme down there? I know at one point we talked about maybe theming the walkway, the path, I had like kicked around, I was like, oh, we should do like a wounded warrior memorial, like path or something. And then back when I was a kid here, we had like workout stuff on the lakefront. You could do like your little chin-ups and
Well, that could happen all along
seesaws
the
and all
trail,
that.
along the trail, the whole length there.
And I was thinking, I wonder if we should do some kind of theming to it, just a thought. And the other thought I had was, has there been any kind of thought about the length? Like now that we have kind of two loops that would be usable on either side, do they add up to a 5K? So you could maybe like have a 5K on one side, maybe if you make an adjustment to the configuration of the boardwalk, you could end up with a 5K loop that I thought maybe that would be
That's a
something.
good thought, that's a good
Something
thought.
good. That's the end of my list. I'm sure I'll think of other things.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. I'm with Lynette as far as the beach. Looks like the beach area, you cut it way, way down. I guess the first question is, where's the boat ramp?
It's at the west.
Where are you gonna park the boats?
They have parking there.
The boat ramp
I don't
is,
see enough.
pardon me?
It's on the west end.
It's on the west side now.
On the center.
Oh, way on over?
No, is there another page?
Oh, there's no page. All right, now let's see, get that.
I think it might be the page before.
Page before, all right. I'm back in the wrong
There
page.
it is right there.
Your packet goes from west to middle to east.
Okay, so you're gonna change that, all right. It looks like to me, in 6 blocks here, we put an awful lot of, we filled it up and then some. And I see that you've made some parking spots, but they're far and few between the parking spots as far as, you gotta walk a mile from one place to another. Have you thought about where your parking locations are at now versus?
Yes, we have, and the answer to it is there's not going to be a solution to park every car for the worst-case scenario on the lakefront. So we're going to have to get creative about that. That was a lot of the impetus for actually moving the boat ramp to the west side, because your boat or your truck and trailer spaces take up a lot of room. Plus, you have the user conflict. So we thought that if we moved the boat ramp to the west side and had the truck and trailer parking separated out, that would create more real estate in the heart of the park. But with that said, there are going to have to be other solutions to getting people to and from the lakefront. If it's a trolley system down Florida Avenue, if you've got a water taxi between Chisholm and Lakefront. But the reality is to be able to park every car that you need to park at the lakefront is going to be, you're going to be paving paradise.
Why instead of Florida Avenue, why not Ohio? Ohio's wider open.
That's fine. It could be.
Have you even looked at it, thought about that?
Well, for this particular project, we were looking at north of Lakeshore Drive. That's why we haven't vetted out the cycle track. We haven't vetted out potentially meandering Lakeshore Drive. We were really looking at north of the right-of-way line. So all of those are good questions. They are starting to be addressed in Envision St. Cloud, but we're taking a section at a time to figure out, all right, how much is the lakefront going to cost? How much are these potential improvements going to cost? And then working through the arrangement of the spaces to have it make sense.
And all this money's coming from where?
I have to defer to Mr. Anderson for that.
You found it yesterday?
Yeah, I have a money. No.
All right.
No,
Go
no.
right ahead.
No, well, again, this is the first step in getting a order of magnitude for costs. And once we have agreed on some type of conceptual master plan, it is then incumbent on us, the city manager, working obviously with our finance director to figure out how we fund this exercise and how we phase it over time. I mean, this is a long-range plan that's going to go over many years. It's not going to happen overnight. So obviously, it has to be done in a phased fashion, if that is a desire of the council to move forward with this plan.
Anything else?
Well, where your boats are gonna be parked versus where your boat ramps are so far, you know, if somebody's got their boats that are parked and they're gonna have to move it, put it in their truck and park it there, they're gonna have to walk 400 feet
I'm sorry, I lost you. From where?
from where your boats are gonna be at the
To the boat.
marina there. If you pull out of that and you want to put it and take it and drive and load it up and take it out, you're gonna have to walk from
Right.
here to way down there. 400 plus feet, aren't you?
Well, if you put your boat in there, but you're coming out there. Now, if you are a resident or someone who has a slip there and
That's what I'm talking about,
every
a
month or
slip.
so you want
Sooner
to
or
pull
later,
and do the
you're gonna have to
bottom.
move that.
Yeah, I guess you'd probably have to take a buddy with you and drop someone
Wow.
off and take it, or make the walk. Yes, you're right. I mean, I'm a boater. I know the dilemma there too.
It just appears to me, it looks like to me, that we're putting an awful lot of stuff here in 6 blocks. I mean, you're just trying to get as much as we can. I understand that, or you all are drawing. But, you know, maybe we ought to just back down on 1 or 2 and say, this is what we really want to be there. Or do we want to put everything? We want a dog park, we want to have an amphitheater, we want to have the
And
theater.
really, the programming is at y'all's purview. What we're doing is taking what was in Envision St. Cloud and taking it to the next step and taking what we heard at the public meetings and summarizing what they wanted to see and matching it up with potential economic development opportunities and putting together a plan. But I think a lot of what you're getting at is why we made some of the decisions of, if we want the heart of the park to really be focused on the pedestrian and the park user, that's why not having boat and trailer parking for a very limited amount of users right in the heart of your park makes sense to move it down to the west side. So if we take that out of the heart of the park and spread out the uses a little bit, it could help. That might not be the ultimate solution that makes sense, but the amount of people, from what we understand, who actually rent a boat slip, the amount of times they're taking their boat out of the water and trailering it somewhere else isn't as often as it is somebody who might be launching at the west end and then coming in and using the tie-ups in the marina, because we will have tie-ups for people who don't have their own slip to be able to tie up and then get out and enjoy the amenities at the park. That will be very easy access. They won't have to walk from the far west end. But it's just an idea. If y'all don't like it, we can certainly go back to the drawing board.
Another question, Mr. Sturgeon, would you give me an answer to be able to put another boat ramp there to the far west, we can get permits, no problem? I mean, we've already got, what, 2 or 3 park lots of boat
I'd have
ramps
to
now?
look into that. I don't know what the regulatory requirements are, but yes, we'd have to go through
Have
a
you all done
permitting
that?
process.
Have you looked ahead?
Yes,
With the state, could we get all these permits and all this?
well, anything's permittable, sure.
Not
It just-
necessarily.
Yeah,
can tell
I
you
mean,
that.
You know, your biggest stumbling block would be Army Corps, of course,
Yes.
along this edge here.
Vegetation is a big problem, I
Absolutely.
can tell you.
Yeah, so it
has
can
to
be
be
done,
okay
can it be
for that.
mitigated and redone? Yes, it can be. It's a matter of time and dollars.
Our guess would be that permitting the boat ramps on the west end and keeping your jet skis and your boats away from the vegetation where it is now is probably going to be more appealing than adding boat slips to the north. I think adding more rentable boat slips is going to be more difficult and lengthier to permit than your boat ramps at the west edge. Don't know that for sure, but that would be our guess based on experience with the Army Corps.
Okay, and where you've got your boat slips that your boats are gonna be, is there enough parking right there for people that own those boats right there, if they wanna come there and park right there?
Well, it depends on what else is going on at the park, but there's going to have to be an off-site parking solution to be able to accommodate the park at maximum capacity.
Have you found that?
Well, again, I think that we're going to have to explore the potential water taxi again with Chisholm. There's going to have to be exploration of using some kind of trolley system from the heart of downtown.
That's not my question, is if you park there and you wanna get into that slip boat that you keeping there, and there's, let's say on a busy weekend, you're gonna get 15 or 20 people that wanna park there and go into their boat that's got a slip there.
Yes.
If there's 15 or 20 people, yes, there's parking.
Yes, there's parking.
If there's 500 people that show up and there's an event.
You can show me on here that you've drawn that, and there's none,
That parking lot right there.
This parking lot, yes.
okay? You're still gonna have to walk another
It's,
150 feet or so, right?
well,
You're gonna carry stuff back and forth. What I'm saying, you're gonna carry all this stuff back and forth to get into the boat or whatever, take skis and whatever they've got with them. This is gonna work.
Well, if people want to be able to walk right out of their car down to the boat, this is not arranged for that. This is arranged for all users. So it's very focused on all users, not just boat users. So yes, if you're reloading and loading your boat every single time and you're going down there every day, you're going to have to walk a little bit to carry all your stuff. If you're storing things on your boat, it shouldn't be a problem.
or we do a drop zone right there for everyone to drop their stuff and park their car.
It's better than it is now. Because right now, this entire west side is boat and trailer parking. So we've tried to improve it and make it better for not only boaters, but for everybody.
Well, I'm back to in the 6 blocks, we're putting an awful lot of new items in there. And I just don't know, it's gonna be absolutely, if we're gonna get that busy, I don't know where you're gonna put all these people and parking and everything that's gonna be there. It's just not gonna, to me, it's not.
We can provide you parking counts. I think that would probably help of each parking lot. I apologize, we don't have those with us tonight, but we can provide you parking counts of each
Come back
lot.
a little more
Yep.
entailed where I'd know where everything's parking and there's enough that I could see it.
Absolutely, as well as along Lakeshore Drive and the parallel spots. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were able to maintain those parallel spots along here too, because that does increase your capacity.
And this has increased parking significantly from what's
Is there
out there
now.
right now, significantly. I don't have the exact number on there, but it's a large increase from the existing conditions.
If I may, Mr. Cooper, the other
Yes.
thing that we're also looking at is a fully integrated plan. It's not just the lakefront alone, because we've been talking for several years now about connecting the lakefront to the downtown. And so if there is not opportunity for parking in the lakefront, you can still park in the downtown, and we can set up some kind of shuttle system to go back and forth. Because as you know, we're looking at Florida Avenue, making that a greenway for pedestrians and for bicyclists and so on. And Florida Avenue is actually the entrance into the Lakefront Park. So we are trying to make that connection between our downtown and the lakefront. So it's not just simply designing the lakefront only, it's also creating opportunities so that folks may visit the downtown park and say, hey, I want to go to the lake. There's a shuttle that can take them there to the lake without having to go to the lake to park initially. So it's more of an integrated solution than simply just a solution for the lakefront park.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Trace.
Thank you. Thank you for putting the plan together. There's some good points in here. First question is, did this go through the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee yet? I was wondering what their feedback was.
No, we did not go through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, but we did have some of them participate in the public meetings that were almost a year ago now.
Okay. Anytime we put a plan together, especially a master plan, I always like to know implementation strategy, kind of fiscal planning capacity of this, just like I think everyone that's asked questions has kind of asked about, like, how do we get this done? If we want to get it done, what are the funding mechanisms, all of that, whether it be impact fees or the infrastructure, sales tax.
And that's exactly why we had to put pen to paper to
Yeah.
do the space planning so we could have an idea of the capital cost. So this is the first blush that anybody has seen of the capital cost. Now that they're out there, then hopefully all that planning can begin.
And then on that same vein of the fiscal side of things, on the hotel, before we spend any money on designing something, putting a pad there or whatever, I just want to make sure that this is fiscally possible for a hotel operator to have a 10 or 15 room something. I'd almost rather folks do. There's some rather large houses there that along Lakeshore that could be turned into beds and breakfasts before this and get the same amount of rooms for kind of do it on the private side instead of on the public side.
Councilman Trace, if you'll recall, we currently do have a bed and breakfast overlay for that area. So it does allow for that right now.
Understood. That's kind of why I'm bringing it up. To echo Deputy Mayor Matheny's comments about the shade and benches, that's simple, low-hanging fruit. Let's just do that, implement that anywhere we can. To go to the area east of Krabby Bill's, I think it's great having more green space there because it is odd to me that there's a parking lot right next to those splash pads, and it's almost seems dangerous to me. But then, again, to echo her comments on don't cut away too much of the beachfront because that is kind of a unique thing to St. Cloud. On the west side of the plan, I really like the idea of putting the boat ramp over there. I was wondering what we would kind of do to redevelop the old wastewater treatment plant. Putting the ramp there, I mean, when folks are coming to boat, they're just parking there, they're going around, they're hanging out on the lake, or they're going Chisholm. I think that's perfect.
The other thing that's an advantage to that I felt that we forgot to mention was that we can actually have a storage down here for a police boat too and not take up any other space. So we can cover that down in this area as well and have really quick in and out access.
Good. It is, especially on that improvement, is there something we can do now that the drawdown's happening to help facilitate that or save us money for construction on any of these improvements because of the East Lake drawdown?
I think the design and permitting first going through the effort would probably take much longer than by the time you've drawn down and brought the water back up. If you're talking about for the new boat ramp condition there, the design and then the permitting, you could be 18 months in permitting alone.
Or at least the scraping of that area.
That, I was gonna say, the vegetation control is the best thing y'all can do right now during the drawdown, for sure.
I know you guys can't see each other, but.
Oh. I can if I
Stephanie.
sit up.
Yeah, so, I don't know if this on.
Yes, sir.
So, I was able to modify the permit and we'll be, hopefully the middle of February. Next couple of weeks, we'll be treating 56 acres right on the north side of, the berms on the retention ponds. I just want to caution that there's only certain vegetation that we can target. So, there will still be, vegetation out there, it just won't be the higher vegetation.
Okay, and then my last comment is on the boardwalks. It's a cool idea, but I just want to make sure we don't get rid of the pathways that are there that are existing, because if you have runners, boardwalks are slippery in the morning, kind of treacherous at times. It's just if people are running down there, they want to run on a path that they know.
Fair enough.
Other than the potholes that we probably should fix, but have that path, kind of something that's a little more safe, a little safer to run on.
Gotcha.
Good point. And it'll be much nicer because of the accessibility along the berms now too.
And then are we, as part of this, I thought I saw something at one point of fixing or doing something different with the weirs, the overflow weirs?
We haven't touched that. I mean, that's an
Okay.
engineered solution. That would be something, and Keith kind of alluded to, trying to
Well,
improve the
in moving,
aesthetics.
in moving the boat ramp and creating a little more usable space over in the lakefront section there, we filled a section of that retention area.
yeah.
Then we expanded it at the far end there, so we
Right here.
believe we're compensating the storage there. So there's some earthwork that happens there, but we were looking at just balancing it out so we didn't get into a whole big re-engineering component. That's as far as we went with this.
Okay.
Do you like the weirs, or do you want them gone? You're talking about with the bridges over them?
Yeah, they're not aesthetically pleasing. They're probably not the best thing to run over and through, and they're broken for quite a while, but I think they're fixed now, right? Okay. And then just to go over some of the parking, I counted it existing. It looks like we have, where did I write that? 45, 47 trailer parking. The proposed solution is 60 paved, it looks like, and probably 30 grass.
Overflow, yeah.
Yeah, 30 overflow.
Yeah.
And then the parking lot west of Krabby Bill's, so where the amphitheater is, looks like 45 spaces, and then proposed 180 total. So it is quite an improvement, almost tripling in both, so.
I'm sorry that you had to do our job for us and we didn't have parking counts with us. We probably should have had that with us tonight, but we weren't focused on the parking, but realized that that's an issue.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing? On the parking, the lot that you just mentioned by west of Krabby Bill's, that lot is also, is proposed to be designed as what we call a shared space streetscape, so there's no curbs. So it can become an extended gathering space as well if we needed to use it in that fashion.
I didn't really talk about that area, but I think we have to get into the weeds on the detail of that just to make sure everything balances and we're not
Yes.
tearing out everything that we have in that area, the couple $1 million worth of stuff we have there just to redo the parking lot or redo something for, so I think we need to talk specifically about some of that stuff.
I want to thank you also for all the work you've done and the new ideas that you have presented. Just to share some of the same concerns, the beach area was one of the first things I noticed. I know that's one of the main attractions down there is the nice size of the beach. I do like the amphitheater idea and being able to have something that's overlooking the water. To me, I think the boat ramp's a great idea. It takes so much of the congestion. It'll help alleviate a lot of the congestions that would be down at the current boat ramp, which often gets very frustrating on July the 4th and other special events. We shut it down, and boaters aren't very happy. They can't even access the lake via that particular boat ramp. I think moving that down there would really relieve a lot of congestion and would help certainly relieve some of the parking. I think parking is always going to be a problem because the space is what it is. You can't make the space larger. You have this limited amount of space that you have to work with. I also concerned about the dog part. I've had a lot of folks who have talked over and over and over about what can we do to have better space for walking our animals, et cetera. The Terrell Point, I've done probably half a dozen weddings out there, and I think that whole point out there has so much more potential if it were decorated better, laid out better with a better amphitheater. I like the idea that Councilmember Thinney talked about putting it out closer to the water because to me that's just a great venue for weddings that I have done there. They're very beautiful, and I'd love to see that space enlarged and become more conducive to that, and I think it'd be used more often.
And one of the things that we were looking at there is to make that wide enough there if you want to have food truck events, things like that, they can actually access that level there, and you could have an entire event there or caterers that could actually go out onto the point there, circle around and come back in.
So actually getting rid of because y'all have the sloped riprap now, so instead of having the sloped riprap taking up so much real estate, actually going straight out and then coming down on sheet piles will increase it. We've talked about porch swing rockers along the walk with shade trees and some really, really cool things. So, the best Dan Terrell Memorial Point that money can buy, really.
At a 500 scale, it just doesn't show the detail.
It doesn't show that detail, but
yeah.
But you can tell that we're not showing the riprap if you look closely, because that really is. In one hand, you can walk down it and get close to the water, but now we have other opportunities to interact with the water that are better than walking down riprap, quite frankly. So we've taken some time on thinking through how this functions.
I certainly like the idea of the expanded boat slips. I certainly think it'll be a major permitting problem and a challenge. I know that one of the frustrations that some boaters have now is they come and if they want to go to Krabby Bill's, almost all the slips are taken and rented, and there's limited space for boaters to come and to park their boats. And so that would certainly be nice, but I think that would be a permitting challenge for sure. Again, thank you for all the work. Mr. Trace, do you have something else? Your
Yeah, I
light's
just
still
wanna, you said something about dog park that reminded me. Is it possible to do something along Dakota?
I know. That's what I was thinking too.
Just, I mean, that's a nice linear park, and if we could just do a
Different
fenced-in
place.
area, you'd probably have to curb part of the road, but.
Not so much traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to move that.
This dog park, we can definitely take out. The thing about a dog park is they're cheap.
It's a fence, couple trees, benches,
Yeah,
and
and
go.
so it can stay or it can go. It's not going to affect the rest of the park very much. Part of it, we did hear from the public about the dog park. We didn't want to put it in the heart of the park because even though they're huge social gathering areas, we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking up your real estate, your limited real estate. But the other thing about this is with this becoming a trailhead, if people are taking, on the west end, if people are taking their boats out and they've got their dogs with them or they're doing the trail and it's functioning as a trailhead, it might be nice to have an off-leash area for the dogs before they're coming in and out of boats and all of that. Because the reality is a lot of people take their dogs everywhere these days. So it's not going to be the greatest response to where you might put a dog park in St. Cloud. Y'all probably could use more than one. We looked at that, but it is a nod to having a smaller, more urban one. We have one right outside our office that the city of Orlando put in. It's tiny, but it's a dense area, and it's what the city could carve out, and people are very grateful for it.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to, just some of this low-hanging fruit to be able to just implement now, some shade, some benches in places, maybe a little dog park down Dakota, just something. Because this, when we get into this is 10, 20-year planning. Some of the stuff that we could do now that's pretty inexpensive, I think would be nice.
Ms. Holcamp, do you have anything for us?
No, sir.
Andre, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Any other questions? Well, we're incredibly grateful to you. We'll certainly have given us a lot of food for thought here, and thank you for all the time and all the renditions and things that you've given us here to work with. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, we appreciate working with you all and your public. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sturgeon, do you have anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way,
It's the same one. It's the
Oh,
same
by the way.
presentation. No, sir, it's the same presentation that's on here.
The second item for discussion on our agenda is discussion regarding the power plant cleanup. Ms. Torrance?
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Terry Torrens. I am with Orlando Utilities. I just wanted to take a moment to...
Step up to the mic a little closer if you would.
Sorry.
Terry, if you'll step up to the mic a little closer.
Sorry.
Thank
Everybody
There
hear me
you
now? All right. All right, so where was I? Terry Torrens, Orlando Utilities. We're here to talk about the power plant cleanup. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you, guys. I wanted to recognize that OUC and the City of St. Cloud have been in a community relationship partnership for 23 years. There's a lot that's gone on over the last 23 years, and we're going to talk a little bit about that at another time. But I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. OUC's role here with this particular project is we are acting as a project manager for you guys for this process. We offer technical expertise. We have our own staff. We have Mike and Leah from our technical support staff with environmental services from OUC, and then we also have Geosyntec, our representative Joe Bartlett from Geosyntec, and he's going to kind of walk through the choices that you guys need to be looking at as you go through this process tonight. So we're acting as your project manager. We're going to be doing some technical support and team building, project administration, and reporting back to you. And we'll kind of cover some of that as we go through this tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, this is Joe Bartlett with Geosyntec.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. You may all not be aware of who we are and what we do, so I wanted to provide a very brief introduction to us before we get into the content. So, as Terry had mentioned, I'm with Geosyntec Consultants Incorporated. We're a full-service environmental and engineering consulting firm, working with a multitude of different private, public sector clients, anything from environmental work, natural resources, civil infrastructure, things like that. We were founded in 1983 with our headquarters down in South Florida, with offices all throughout Florida State and the rest of the nation as well. Unfortunately, Eric Sager was unable to join us tonight due to illness. However, worth noting, he serves as project director of the project efforts going on, and as a professional, has been a professional geologist for the 20 plus years. And serves mainly to manage Geosyntec's petroleum restoration program contract with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Worth noting because he has spent a significant amount of time and effort in developing the material that we're presenting here tonight. Myself, I've been with Geosyntec for about 10 years now, 10 years experience as a professional engineer, working mainly associated with these petroleum restoration program sites, as well as a multitude other of private and public clients, such as UC. So, moving on. We're here this evening to discuss specifically presenting 4 different cleanup scenarios or cleanup options. With all of these 4 different options, they're all built to proceed within the framework and the timelines that are dictated by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So, in order to develop these different scenarios, we evaluated different parameters, those being closure strategies and future use of property. So, to boil it down, the closure strategies we evaluated were 1 being clean closure, to simplify, no restrictions. We'll go into this a little bit more. The second one being conditional closure, otherwise, with deed restrictions on the site. The other parameter that we evaluated was the future use of the property, as it particularly pertains to the building. Whether or not to demolish the entire building, whether or not to demolish a portion of the building with retention of the facade, and that is the wall on the south side of the property, or the third option being retention of the entire building. So, backing up a little bit, now that we know why we're here, what we're discussing, I wanted to touch base on the current understanding of the site. Geosyntec has been contracted, and we have conducted soil and groundwater assessment activities back in August and September of 2019. This resulted in identification of different petroleum constituents that are above the cleanup target levels as dictated by Florida Department of Environmental Protection in both the soil and groundwater at the site. So, to help visualize this, you can see here. There's yellow, there's yellow-orange, what we call isoplests or plumes, which represent soil impacts as we understand it currently. The red on there represents the groundwater impacts as we understand currently. I say that because assessment is ongoing. We have not completed our assessment activities, meaning we have not effectively delineated where the boundaries of these plumes are. These are inferred plumes at the moment because we have to continue our assessment by going out there and essentially getting clean points of soil and groundwater, so we can effectively demarc where the boundaries and the extents of our plumes are. So, with that in mind, as I mentioned, this is an ongoing process. To put that in a frame of reference, we expect within 2 to 3 years we will have a clear path forward and approved remedial action or cleanup plan. This means that within 2 to 3 years' time, we'll complete the assessment activities, we'll complete the necessary site assessment reports, put it through review and approval, complete the remedial alternatives evaluation, which is a pretty lengthy process, completing the remedial design itself, getting that through review and approval. At that point, approximately 2 to 3 years' time, we actually finally start cleaning this up. So that gives a good frame of reference, right? Now, that being said, in order to evaluate these different scenarios, there is obvious inherent uncertainty with where we are at currently. So, in order to address that and mitigate the uncertainty, basically what you want to do is evaluate a conservative or worst case scenario. So, based off of the known extents, we basically increase the size, as I mentioned, to be conservative and worst case scenario to make sure that we're covering all the potential bases that we could be. So in turn, we have our yellow inferred lines, and then which represent the soil impacts, and then the red dashed inferred line, which represents potential groundwater impacts. As you can see, containing, incorporating most of the site. As I mentioned, this is a conservative, worst case scenario approach. Okay, so now, we know what we're looking at here. We know what our treatment area is. We know what we're trying to do. So moving on to drill down further into the parameters that I discussed that were evaluated to come up with these different strategies. The first one being closure strategies. So let's drill down a little bit more. Closure strategies include either clean closure, as I mentioned, or conditional closure. Regardless of the closure strategy that's selected, they are both protective of human health, public safety, and the environment. In other words, they both reduce the risk of any receptors or users of the property coming in contact with any of the soil or groundwater contamination. So as I mentioned, both closure strategies protect the human health, public safety, and environment. So drilling down a little further, clean closure, first option. This essentially means no restrictions. We've cleaned the site up. We've removed all soil and groundwater impacts to below the Florida Department of Environmental Protection cleanout target levels. This leaves the site unrestricted and free to use as you please. Conditional closure is another option that's available, and this includes leaving petroleum contaminants in place below actionable limits, but above those cleanup target levels. So in order to do this while mitigating the risk, you put in place what are different restrictions, either being institutional controls or engineering controls, which we will discuss in detail a little bit later. So clean closure, pretty basic, right? No further action, we're clean, unrestricted. So conditional closure is obviously a little bit more involved, so I wanted to drill into that just a little bit before we discuss our scenarios. Conditional closures. All right, so as I mentioned, it's a little more involved, deed restrictions, things like that, so specialized legal counsel is recommended in order to help you through and facilitate those processes. I mentioned there's a couple different types of controls we can have, engineering controls and institutional controls. So engineering controls represent a physical barrier, an engineered barrier, being an asphalt cap, a 2-foot clean soil cap, things like that. Something that's applied and in place, meaning that it has to be maintained, and an engineering control maintenance plan has to be conducted, annual inspections, you have to maintain that, you have to keep records of the maintenance issues, and this is done in perpetuity with the deed, and it's transferable to property owners as such. The other option would be institutional controls, and this is more restricting use of the media, of the soil and the groundwater on the site. Thou shalt not touch the ground, or thou shalt not recover the groundwater within this footprint. There's restrictions associated with that, construction of stormwater features, anything that would interact with the impacted media. So in both of these options, either engineering controls or institutional controls, you can either have either or both. They're considered deed restrictions because they run in perpetuity with the land and the title, and as I mentioned, are transferable to the property owners. In addition, in order to even apply these engineering or institutional controls, a 30-day comment period, which includes posting in a local newspaper, things like that. A 30-day comment period is required for the public to evaluate these options that are set forth, and they have an opportunity to discuss, and you would then be responsible for answering any questions or addressing any concerns they may have, which ultimately means that this option could potentially come off the table if there's enough backlash. Moving on, additional to that, if we were to accept engineering or institutional control, FDP would have to be granted right of entry in order to inspect as needed. In addition to that, the site would also be entered into the FDP Institutional Control Registry, which is a list of applied institutional controls. The site location will be provided on an interactive map for people to see, things like that. Okay, so now we have an understanding of the parameters that we evaluated to select these scenarios. So let's go ahead and look at the different scenarios. I'd like to draw your attention to the top row first. We'll explain what's here, and then we'll go through each scenario and discuss. So the first column is a description, obviously just presenting the 4 different scenarios that we have. Estimated time. So this is estimated time to completion, to closure, to estimated time to meet the selected objective. Okay, cost. So this is a qualitative value represented in dollar signs essentially in a relative comparable fashion. The reason we didn't want to present quantitative values is because, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't even completed assessment yet. There's way too much uncertainty, and we felt that by providing numbers, it would cause more harm than good. So that's why we've presented these different options in a relative fashion. Moving on, restrictions. This essentially is tied to our conditional closure options. You know, if we have a conditional closure, there's obviously restrictions, as I discussed. With a clean closure, no restrictions. Recurring costs. That is associated with costs that are incurred outside of the completion or outside of a closure, associated with the maintenance or associated with building maintenance. I say the first one associated with engineering control or maintenance, things like that, or building maintenance, whatnot. We'll discuss that a little detail as we go over the scenarios. The last column would be uncertainty, and this has to do with essentially the uncertainty of the site, our confidence level that we can achieve the selected goal based off of the unknowns currently. Okay, so let's drill down into each scenario. First one, clean closure and demolition of the entire building. We estimate approximately 5 to 6 years. This was the 3rd most expensive option, being the cost of the demolition of the building considered. However, with that, we would have easier access to complete our assessment and implement the remedial strategies. With the clean closure, no restrictions. Recurring costs are low because or nil, because it's a clean closure, no more contaminants, building's gone. The uncertainty is low to medium. We're fairly confident that we can accomplish assessment, a complete assessment, and implement an effective remedial strategy with a clear site, the real and gone, and moving forward like that. So next option, clean closure and demolition of the building with retention of the facade. This is very, very similar to the first one. However, we've increased some time, increased some costs associated with working around a building that has a facade being held up, right? We feel that we would still have the accessibility and the ability to implement remedial strategies. It's just we're considering having to work around this, this structure that's now being held up in place, and it's just the difficulty of working around that. So those are the considerations for this second step, which, the low to medium recurring cost is associated with maintaining that facade, things like that. And the uncertainty is similar to the first option. Okay, so third option would be clean closure with retention of the entire building. This is going to be our longest option just because of the additional effort required to assess. There's actually a basement on the building that goes down into the ground in order to access sampling points underneath the footprint of the building. Additional steps will be required. Assessment will be slowed. Implementation of a remedial strategy will be slowed and uncertain as well. However, cost is the second lowest of this, and no restrictions because we're looking at a clean closure here. Recurring costs we place at medium just because of the retention of the building itself, maintenance of this old building. The uncertainty is high, the highest one out of all the options. As I mentioned, just the inability, the inaccessibility to effectively assess a site is going to be restricted with the footprint of the building there. Remediation is mainly a lot of it, big chunk of it, of its success has to do with a fully developed conceptual site model, is what we call it, or an effective assessment. This helps design a more effective remediation system. So that's why uncertainty is high, is because we feel with the building there, we'd have a more difficult time, completing that. Okay, fourth option would be our conditional closure. We've included this with the retention of the building. We didn't include, for example, a conditional closure with removal of the building because we figured if the time and effort was had to remove the building, we might as well spend the time and effort to clean it to a clean closure. So the conditional closure with the retention of the building, approximately 6 to 8 years. The idea being that, of course, we would have to refine assessment. We would have to implement a limited remedial strategy because with the conditional closure, we aren't targeting a lower level. We only have to clean up to a certain, an interim level and then apply those institutional or engineering controls. So this would be the cheapest option up front to closure. However, as mentioned, there would be restrictions, which implies that it really does limit the use, the potential future use of the property because of those restrictions that are in place. Recurring costs would be the highest out of the 4 options associated with the maintenance plan, associated with the inspections, things like that. And the uncertainty on this is medium, relatively low. With the building in place and with the conditional closure options, that does, we could get that, but as I mentioned, the restrictions will be in place. So those are our 4 options that we presented. And that's all I have to present. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Mr. Sturgeon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. First off, council, I apologize that you have to make this decision. This should have been taken care of many years ago. I have a representative here from Orange County Environmental Protection Department. I'm going to call him up to the mic. We're under the gun here from Department of Environmental Protection to get this cleaned up. The clock has run out. They're serious that we need to come up with a remediation plan forthwith and move forward. So with that said, I asked Jim to come up and make a comment.
Thank you. It's good to have you.
Good evening. My name's James Russell. I'm the engineer 3 with the Orange County Environmental Department of Orange County Environmental Protection Division. We are under contract to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to oversee and assess and remediate petroleum contaminated sites in Orange, Lake, Seminole, and Osceola County. That's why I'm here tonight. And it just so happens out of the 400+ sites we oversee, I'm the site manager on this site. So I'm the senior PE for the program, and this site happens to be mine. I've had it for the last 3 years. I've been working with the city as the real property owner to come forward and get this project moving. We have timeframes associated with the rules and regulations the state of Florida that we're well behind. And it just so happens that OUC and the city in the last couple of years have worked together to get the project moving. But we are behind the 8 ball and need to get the project moving further. And as Joe said, we don't really know what we got. We've got preliminary data that we just obtained that tells us we have issues. But the total horizontal and vertical extent of what we have has not been defined. So until we know really what we're dealing with, how we're going to clean it up, and how we're going to do it in a timely and cost-efficient manner is yet to be determined. Any questions?
How far behind the 8 ball are we as far as the time frame's concerned? You said you've been sitting on this for 3 years.
No, I have been working with y'all.
For 3 years?
For 3 years, trying to get it rolling. If I told you the time frames that are in the rule,
we would not be happy.
My boss probably wouldn't be happy. But because I actually have had calls or emails from the Office of Inspector General asking me what was moving forward on this project. And I have told them that we have been working towards resolution.
Well, I can certainly speak for myself. This is something we certainly have absolutely got to move forward on as rapidly and as quickly as possible, because I think the situation only gets worse. The contamination slowly continues to spread, and this certainly needs to be addressed. And I think now certainly has to be the time. Any questions from council? Councilmember Thiene.
Thank you. There's been monitoring wells out there for years, though, haven't there? Like monitoring the groundwater?
Yes, the site was under management by Polk County, who is a similar local program to us here at Orange County. but I don't want to say anything about my neighboring local program, but it's under our oversight now, and I'd like to see the project moving forward.
So do you have any advice for us on moving forward with the remediation? I mean, from your years of experience, do you see like, or you won't?
I've been in this industry for 28 years, and until you know what you're dealing with, it's hard to figure out how to clean it up. And there are a lot of issues hindering the assessment of the facility just to determine what you have.
And what are those obstacles?
Well, we put in wells inside the basement that we can't find now.
Well, my number one comment on my notes was, do we know the limits of the plume? I mean, I think that's.
No, we do not.
I think we're all, I mean, you answered that. I mean, I think that's, to me, like the number one, you know, what do we need to do? Do we need to like authorize work, or is OUC doing that because they're acting as our project manager? Or, you know, like what do we need to do to know the limits of the plume? I think it's kind of hard to pick a way to move forward when we don't really know. And, you know, like your graphic, of course, I know you're doing like a conservative, but, you know, your graphic is like the entire site. So, you know.
Well, they do the work and submit the reports to me,
Sure.
and I'm the one that tells them if they've defined it or not.
Okay.
And you are not defined, both horizontally and vertically.
I get that.
Okay.
I feel like it's kind of like Mohs surgery, right? Like you have to keep going until they get clean boundaries.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go way out to find
Right.
clean and then step
Then
back
move in, right.
to find reasonable.
Right. Well, I just, you know, I need to know what we need to do to move forward to get the plume defined. Is that something? Whoever is controlling this, I don't know if it's us or OUC or.
OUC is our project manager.
That's y'all's questions.
Councilmember Trace.
Well, were you done?
Yeah, that's
I thought
fine.
you- Okay. Can someone go back to the slide that has the grid on it?
4 scenarios.
Yeah, because I'm definitely a numbers person. So, first off, the map that was there before that had the red and orange, it pretty much covers the entire power generation site. But from the backup I saw, there was also issues with the substation site or the EOC site to the west. Is that incorporated into this of the cleanup? I didn't see that. It wasn't really referenced in the presentation at all.
That's correct. The reason it was not referenced is because there's an existing monitoring well network in place across the entire site. That portion being included. We, as the initial step of the assessment activities, we sampled those wells, and they came out clean. Previously, there's been previous remedial activities in that area, including excavations, multiple excavations too, and at this time, you know, we, based off of the results that we collected in August and September, we see that the groundwater concentrations in that area have reduced to less than the cleanup target levels, and thus currently not an area of concern.
Commercial or residential cleanup target levels?
So groundwater is.
Oh, that's.
Yeah,
that's what,
but soil, that does differentiate, you know, the residential and industrial, commercial.
Mm-hmm.
We do have one, on-site on the main property, we do have one exceedance of commercial industrial levels. The remaining are residential.
On the substation property?
Correct. No, on the main power plant property. That's
So we
correct.
just have one that exceeds commercial cleanup level? One spot?
That's correct.
And is that the biggest spot, or is that like area?
It's kind of in the heart of darkness in the center of the property there.
Heart of darkness.
Yeah, that's what we like to call that. Yeah.
Is that area of concern 3, this is suspected tank, or 6, the basement?
So what we have found is through previous assessment activities by previous consultants, they found the best way to organize the site was based off of areas of concern, AOCs. And these were tied back to different discharge reports that were submitted to FDP back in the day, starting in the 80s through the 90s. And what we have found through our current assessment activities is that these previously demarked AOCs are really no longer appropriate.
It just kind of blends together.
It all
'cause
blends
it's
together now. If I were to show you a previous figure with previous impacts and the current one that we have now, we would see that it's completely different. As someone had alluded to, you know, things change. This isn't a static thing, so.
On the closure matrix, on the reoccurring cost side, what order of magnitude are we talking about of what is a low cost per year, what is a high cost per year?
Sure. I would imagine that you would understand my hesitancy, right? Just want to caveat that.
Yep.
So I'll answer that by providing, you know, the ramifications and of some of the items, you know, with the conditional closures, as I mentioned, the engineering maintenance control plan, the inspections, the maintenance. Other than that, with the clean code closures, you know, it would really be related to maintenance of the existing remaining structures. It's hard to put a value on that.
The what did you call it? The inspections that have to be done is probably just consultant going out there for a couple hours, you know, a couple $1,000s per year to do the reporting.
I would say upwards to 10 to 50,000. You know, it depends on. I'm hesitant because it depends on the engineering control that's applied, right? As I mentioned, there's a couple different physical barriers you can apply. An asphalt barrier's partially existing, right? We don't know if we would need to apply the engineering control to the entire property or just a portion of the property. Right, it's too variable.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to. Is it $1 million per year, or is it $10,000 per year?
Yeah.
And that's the magnitude I'm kind of looking for. Okay.
Right.
Uncertainty, I understand. The restrictions, I understand. And on the restriction side of things, if we do the clean closure, is that clean it up? Which level does that clean up?
Yeah, sure. So clean closure, in all of the top three scenarios, clean closure is defined by soil being less than residential or leachability cleanup target levels, and the groundwater below the groundwater cleanup target levels. Basically removing impacts to a no further action status as designated by Florida Department of Environmental Protection. You have something to add, Jim?
Those are cleanup levels established by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection based on a 1 in a million cancer chance and a hazard quotient of 1.
Perfect. And then on the conditional closure, I mean, this would essentially be like a little mini landfill. You cap it, you check it out every year, you make sure that nothing's migrated, nothing's moved, and everything's staying in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically,
just equate it all to just wrap it up and make sure it doesn't move.
That's right. That's right. You're essentially with the cap. The cap is essentially mitigating any leaching ability from rainwater, from runoff, which would potentially pull the soil contaminants down into the groundwater as it leaches through and percolates through. With putting a cap there, you're essentially, as you refer to it, you're entombing it. You know, that's why it's super important to maintain it. Obviously, right? And the restrictions associated with that.
Okay, perfect. Next on to the building itself, because it seems like that's the decision we have to make. Do we want to keep the facade? Do we want to keep the building? Or do we want to demolish it? I've toured the building, and apparently you're supposed to have a respirator on when you're in there. Because
absolutely, our staff in the basement portion, at least, our staff we had a health and safety audit. Our staff were required to wear a half-face respirator with a PM 100 filter and everything. Ventilation is an issue, lighting is an issue, trip hazards, mold.
It's definitely not safe the way it's sitting. Yeah.
Correct. If we were to want to continue our assessment activities in there, we would absolutely need to bring in some sort of qualified contractor to assess, clear out, mitigate any of those hazards before we spend a lengthy time, in that basement area. It's pretty harsh in there.
Yeah, it's. I can't remember if I took pictures or not, but it was probably a year ago that I was in there, and it's not. Yeah. Is there any other? So there's definitely an aroma in the building of fuel, right? Is there any other issues with the building from a asbestos or lead paint or anything? I mean, it's an old building, right? Those things were normal back in the day.
Sure.
I mean, is that?
Yeah, so as part of the uncertainty, that was considered, in order to effectively, this conversation came up when we were trying to get a number, right? And it's just like, oh my God. So, in order to effectively do that for this particular building, we would need to conduct a full inventory. There's still the generators in there, piping. We would need to conduct a full hazardous audit, a hazardous material audit. Is there still material in the piping? Is there still liquid, oil in the generators? I know that there's mercury switches that are associated with these power generation buildings. There is confirmed to be one wall that does have asbestos. All these things could serve to increase the cost of building demo exponentially. And if we do not have a good understanding of that, then I do not, that is why I do not feel comfortable discussing numbers, Yep.
You literally quite start digging a hole that you don't know where the bottom is.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then any other structural issues with the building that we know of?
We haven't had a structural engineer out there.
Bill had that one.
I have the building official who's done an assessment, Mr. Bob Deathridge. He can answer some of your questions.
Bob, come on up and help us.
Good evening. We were just out there today, actually. Took a good look around the building. There is deflection in the exterior walls of the original structure of the power plant. You're asking about other environmental hazards. You can probably just about name anything and it's going to be in that building. There's asbestos, there's lead. It was built at the turn of the century. It's structurally not in the best shape. If we were to retain the building, it would be a substantial investment to get the building to usable shape, and I don't know that you would ever remediate the diesel smell out of it.
Well, from what I've read, the building itself is contaminated. The concrete, you're looking at concrete that would have to come out.
Correct.
Because it's so saturated. And I've been in the building, and I didn't take a respirator. I won't go again, but looking at here at this list of 4 things, for me, conditional closure is totally off the plate for me. This has to be a clean closure. And what I'm concerned about is if you're trying to retain the building, the building is contaminated itself. That's just going to be I know historically you certainly would like to preserve part of that building, but, you could almost tear the whole building down and rebuild another building that would be usable, even identical, and preserve the structure that you're used to seeing there. If you wanted to do that, then it would be a whole lot cheaper just looking at trying to retain this building and trying to deal with this for the next 8 to 12 years, and even that's uncertain.
Right.
Wow, and then the costs we hadn't even thought about yet, and that are probably going to be much higher than we realize, is really scary. But I'm certainly believing that whatever we got to do, we have to clean the ground up. We have to completely do whatever has to be done, of course, to clean that ground, not leave anything in the ground, and have a complete clean closure. Ms. Matheny, you had your light on first.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the council some experiences I've had with contaminated soils with a road project. And I know I just heard the mayor's position of the clean closure, but I know that I've been involved in projects that have had contamination, and the contamination stayed in place. It was under a road, but the challenges that it presented for doing anything related to that road were great. You couldn't dewater, so let's say we need to put new utilities in, they need to trench in the lines. You can't produce the groundwater because you're gonna move it, you're gonna move the contamination. And if you do, you have to like put it all in a tank and then you have to ship it somewhere that can get treated. It's very expensive, you know, I don't know, redeveloping the site, you might have to have a stormwater pond. There's no stormwater pond on here right now. So, you know, there is challenges to leaving it in the soil, even if it's conditionally clean or it's got an engineered cap on it. That will be a challenge. I still feel like we're premature in making a decision because we have so many unknowns. And I had on my list asbestos / mold, you know, because I was wondering. I also was in that building without a mask.
I think the diesel killed the mold, though.
I'm like, is this a strategy to get rid of us? Send us all in that building? You know, I struggle with it because I think it's a cool looking building, but then I also have been inside of the St. Cloud Hotel, which is one we've been trying to save, and I know the challenges that that building has had, and the metal skeleton they had to build because it didn't have the structural integrity in the walls that, you know, you can't take the roof off because the walls will fall off. You know, there's all these problems. And like when I went through that probably 6-8 months ago with the city manager, maybe even longer than that, but you know, you're kind of walking around and at some point you go, gosh, should we have taken this building down? Like, I don't want the building to go down, but just when you see all of the challenges and struggles with it. So for me, I feel like we're too premature to make a decision. I'd like to understand exactly where the plume is. I'd like to know exactly what challenges there are with the building. You know, I was wondering, like, would the building withstand hurricane, you know, would it be hurricane rated? Would we have to do something to the building? Now you're saying there's a bow in the wall. That doesn't sound good.
Definitely in the west wall.
And then I didn't know, like reading this matrix and looking at the map, are we proposing, you know, if you do the retention of the building, are you proposing to retain all of the buildings? Because when we went through it, I know like there seems to be kind of a main building and then another building that had kind of like a greenhouse roof on it, but it was attached.
Metal.
So anyways, I just feel like there's too many questions right now to answer. I would want a clean closure because I know it's a city property and it probably will always stay a city property, but if you go and put all this money in here and you have a conditional closure, it has like zero value.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor? I could address her if you'd like. I can answer your question about the premature decision if it's helpful, if you're...
Well, just remember, you're not making a decision tonight. It's a workshop, you cannot make a decision
Well,
tonight.
whatever we say is kind of how we
Right,
want to move forward.
We're looking for direction on how and where you are and having discussion on your options.
I would like more information personally. And as I was kind of looking around the room, I'm not sure who's holding us back from getting that. And if it's us, can we move forward or do we need to direct someone to do something? But I would like to have more information.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Sturgeon, if you just go back 2.5 years ago, you weren't on the council, but city manager, but at the time, I think almost every second or third meeting I was saying, we need to do something with the power plant, Mr. Sturgeon, or what are we doing? And I've asked you. Well, we're working on it. We're looking with OUC and we're trying to figure out a plan to do something. It looks like to me to get it cleaned, knock out, you've got to take all that fill dirt out and pick everything up, and it's like it keeps growing. If it keeps growing, you're gonna have to keep digging and more dirt out. Looks like to me, I've looked inside probably 3 times I've been there. You've got some of the concrete, the heights, probably 4 or 5 feet differentials. So if you're going to put concrete in between, you're going to have to start filling concrete, or you're going to have to take out a lot of concrete to level it. You're almost going to have to take it out before you get it leveled down at the bottom. So I would say, I think you would agree with me, you probably would have to take the walls out to be able to get the foundation and the footer, get it leveled out to start with. Would that be pretty correct?
Yeah, that would be a pretty close assessment of it. And again, you have to remember that there's probably 4 separate structures out there. You have the original structure.
They are, and they're all cut, they were all put in different times, I'm
Right.
sure.
Right, you have the original structure, then there was a control room added
It was.
to the south of that, and then on the east and southeast were metal buildings that were added. So the original structure of that building has been completely altered.
A lot of it done when I was just different kids, when I was just different ages, but I remember that. But it just appears to me if you've got a bow and a wall, or the whole wall that's already there, to straighten it out, your only way you're going to do it is going to take that wall completely out on that west side. So you're taking 1/4 of it out to start with. And then you've got the floor that's up and down, that's 4 to 5 foot height and difference.
Right.
You've got concrete that is probably thickness of somewhere 10 or 12 inches thick, probably, that's got these powered motors here. And we've never got the engines out. We've got them all torn up. They cut and cobbled, and they took the best parts they wanted. Anything that had copper in there, or they took all the good parts out and they salvaged it, but the rest of it's still there.
Yes, sir.
My suggestion would be if we could keep at least one of the smaller motors that you could probably keep in some place, put it in a corner on the same location, put it enclosed in plexiglass or something like that, where the kids could look at it and the people could look at it and the rendering of what it used to be, and they could remember, and put a little plaque and say what it was and show a picture of what it is now before we tear it down, take it down. But to be able to get it completely clean and get it to where usable, serviceable, to go back and put another structure that the city would want to put something or lease it out or put some kind of, place to eat or something like that. I think you can't never, that's not a good word, you can never use what you've got now and turn it into residential or commercial where citizens would be in there every day to breathe and to deal with it. I don't think you could ever get it clean. So I think somebody needs to, could any of you all give us me an idea, a low and high of taking it out, just taking everything out, knocking down the walls, versus not doing it and doing the most expensive of just.
As I mentioned, there are way too many uncertainties currently to try and predict a value on that. You mentioned there's engine blocks in there that are 20 feet high. There's potentially still product in the lines. We have the asbestos. The lead has not been assessed or evaluated. As I mentioned, there are potentially mercury switches associated with all the power generation mechanics.
I know in the center wall there, you're going to have to take the center wall out, inner wall, and then take the east's other wall out, that aluminum wall, to be able to get those motors out.
Right.
Unless you could cut them, I don't think you get a torch that cut those
Right.
things. They're
And
very, very thick.
Correct, and as part of the process to evaluate a cost, right? Because if that was the selected option, obviously we would need to provide a cost for this, proposal for the activity. And so in order to do that, we feel that the best course of action would be to invite, relevant subcontractors or contractors who are savvy to this type of work to the site. They can then effectively, as I mentioned, we would have to conduct the hazardous material audits, a general inventory. The contractors would then use all this information along with a site visit to effectively come up with a proposed cost. So at this time, I do not feel comfortable, guessing.
Okay, how do we proceed forward to be able to, all of the 5 council members to come up with an idea of either take everything out, or if we leave the structure and just everything else around it and go from there? Who would you invite that would say, okay, we're going to take everything down, or we're going to leave everything?
Well, if Terry Torrance, Orlando Utilities, I just kind of wanted to kind of step in here a little bit.
Sure.
I wanted to mention and address what Councilwoman Matheny mentioned about it seems a bit premature and there's not enough information. There's a reason why we're here tonight. Part of the things that were in the report, and there's a lot of stuff in there, is that we have preliminary site assessment. So Geosyntec has gone out based on what's out there and collected data. So we know we have known contamination both in water and soil. We need to do additional testing as part of the next phase of assessment. The reason why we're here asking for what is your wishes with the building is because the building is where all the site assessment needs to occur. So the soil sampling, the water sampling that needs to go on is in the footprint of the existing structures. It makes a difference in terms of cost for the city for the next level of assessment. So we know that we need to do another round of assessment that needs to be turned back into DEP, and correct me if I'm missing anything here. And so because of that, because the next round of soil sampling and water sampling is where the building is, we need to know whether you want to keep the building or not keep the building, or keep a facade or not keep a facade, because it makes a difference on how much you will spend on the next round of assessments. So if we have to work and tiptoe around a building that we're trying to save and preserve and try to install wells and do soil sampling in a building in a hazardous condition, you can imagine the cost of the next round of assessment to get that vertical and horizontal delineation done. So the reason why it seems premature, and it has to be premature, because we need to know what you want to do about the building, so that we need to know if we need to spend we need to spend the dollars to do the site assessment under the building, thinking that perhaps you want to save it or not. So if you guys know that the decision is that you're not willing to spend the money to save the building in perpetuity, then it's better for us to know now, OUC, who's your project manager and who is your next steps, and that's where, so to get to the next step of assessments, we need a decision from you guys about what your preference is about if the building remains or doesn't remain, because that makes a big difference for the next round of sampling that Geosyntec has to do, because it changes their course of action. If they're having to work in a quote-unquote building they're trying to preserve, that they're going to have to use different methodologies. And so that's why we're here now, and that's why it's difficult to give you some of the things we would all like to be able to give you. Everybody loves numbers. We all want to know where we are. But we've got a couple of things that we are trying to deal with. We have, a situation that's been sitting out there for a number of years, and we're trying to keep moving along so that FDEP continues to be happy with our progress. And so the next step is we need to do that sampling. The sampling needs to occur in the footprint of the building. So that's why we're here asking. So the next step is that. That means we will have another set of data that we'll be able to look at, which will come, a year or better, 2 years?
Better than a year. Yeah.
So needing to know what your wishes are specific to the building is important.
Okay, what if we go ahead and sped it up a little bit, the process, and we looked at it and it's already that the building inspector's already looked at it, it's in pretty bad shape, I would assume. It needs nothing that you could really usable, even the ground, the concrete could not even be used. So let's just look at it this way. If we started demolition and tore it down, took the plant out, what about cleaning up after that? How quickly could you be doing that, or assessment for it to be able to ready to clean the ground?
So if you look at the matrix, if you're looking at that timeline, estimated time for us, OUC, Geosyntec, and the state of Florida all to said, okay, here's the plan, Geosyntec, City of St. Cloud, OUC all agreed that we got to the end of the plan, everybody's signed off, everybody's happy. the fastest, shortest route is clean closure with entire demolition of the property. So if time is of the essence, which I think is important, I think that that's part of the process. But I think the bigger picture here is the cost of the overall cleanup. And right now, the building and the structure being where it is going to increase the cost of the actual cleanup and the evaluation of cleanup. So the question is, with regard to OUC and our process and how we're interfacing with you guys on that, we can spend a lot of money up front working around a building that may not end up being successfully saved anyhow because it may fall down.
Okay.
We also put our people in a little bit more danger. Can it be done? Yes. Sure, it can be done. Can they work in full rebreathers? Sure, it can be done. Can we work in those conditions and sample the soil and the water? The answer is yes.
Okay.
It just takes longer, costs more money, and it has a larger risk associated with it. So if your intent is to do this as expeditiously as possible and as efficiently and cost-effective as possible, then not having the building there
Would be
is
better.
a better choice from that perspective.
Okay, that was my question, and I guess we finally got there to the same
Sorry.
place.
It's so complicated. I apologize.
No,
Good.
and it would be a whole lot less money down the road. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Councilmember Trace.
I forgot my question.
I thought so long you had that, right?
Thank you.
Councilmember Thiem.
Thank you. So, can we ask the building official what his opinion is of the building? Is it suitable
Sure,
to
we can.
save, or is it something that should be torn down, or what's your professional opinion of the building?
My opinion of the building is that it should come down. There's, in my professional opinion, there is nothing that you could ever use that building for in its current configuration without a substantial investment.
Thank you.
I think I remember.
You remember your question there?
So,
Hey, can I say you're too young for that?
yeah, I know. Well, I'm trying to listen, and then it just vacates my head.
That's why I didn't have notes.
Did he visit the building?
What is the, so we're talking about the sampling costs for keeping the building or not, right? Like, that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. Do we have ballparks of what it would be with the building, without the building?
You're an engineer, and you're forcing an engineer
like
to answer this
numbers,
question. You
right.
know how hard and painful this is?
Because some of it we'd get, some of that money would be, if you're having to make modifications to the building or take out things, we'd have to take that out anyway at some point, right? So it's just kind of like pushing costs around, but then there's
Right.
some things, if you need to do ventilation or something, that would be something that we wouldn't recoup.
Right.
So.
Exactly. And that was part of the discussion is why spend all this money to mitigate these hazards when you're just potentially will demolish the building anyways. What I can tell you is current assessment costs thus far incurred have been upwards to $70,000. And so this is an initial phase, which is expected, in multiple phases are expected to complete assessment. And this is normal, it's par for the course.
Okay. So the sampling that's done, you bring a drill rig in, you guys drill down 15 feet, 25 feet? I think I saw some different.
Sure. So soil sampling that was conducted at the site, we did both 15 feet across the site. This is really to capture vadosone soil contamination and just a little bit into the groundwater. And then the 30-foot soil borings were collected to get a vertical distribution and be able to generate a nice cross-section down to 30 feet across the entire site, which serves to help develop remedial strategies.
And then, so the reason the building's kind of in the way is you've got this big drill rig that you have to get in there to drill a hole and get the samples and put the well casing in, right? I mean,
That's,
kind of
that's
the
right,
gist.
and the restrictions of the basement, right? The basement itself is pretty restricted. I have trouble standing, but I have trouble standing a lot of places. And
I
but
think a microphone to reach when you're.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's restricted in both height and ventilation and lighting, things like that, and other hazards.
Perfect, thanks.
Well, it certainly seems to me that I think we're all in it in agreement that the conditional closure is not on the table? Surely. And it seems to me, from a practical standpoint, the second option doesn't even make sense. You know, if the goal is to retain the building for historical purposes, just retaining one facade doesn't make any sense. So either, you know, you're going to either work for the next 12 years to hopefully retain a building that is contaminated, there's probably going to continue to be a contamination problem, or you're going to demolish the building. It seems to me you're down to items 1 and 3 on that list. Is the light still on?
Yep. I just turned it back on. So the original building itself is approximately 120 feet long and 45 feet deep back. That's where the original power generation units are. If we do take this building down, I at least want to get that lean-to, the lean-to that's along 10th Street, take that off and then like laser scan or something, the facade of the building. To just, there's cool architecture to it. So I think that's laser scan that side, the west side, just to where if we build something else on the property, we can build that same, you know, looking facade and get the same look and feel out of it. And then some of the historic pictures we have, there's some other cool attributes that were on that site before. And then as we talk through this, and especially if we start getting going with some heavy construction on the site, I want to make sure that we take the food pantry into account and their operation and try to, if there's somewhere else we can move them, or if it's not going to affect them at all, then that's fine. But I just want to make sure that we take that into account as we talk through options.
Mr. Sturgeon, you have any recommendations for us?
Again, you've heard the details and that there's more information that's needed. It's very difficult to delineate that plume of those 7 areas of concern with the building in place. That's a difficult decision. You know, my recommendation is to photograph the building, laser the building, collect some of the artifact, maintain whatever we can from a historical perspective, and then we need to do a complete site cleanup so we can use it for economic redevelopment.
Could move it ahead.
Any other input from council? Dan, help me here. What do we need to give you with?
Well, my first piece of advice was don't go in the building without a respirator.
You're too late, the lawyer.
We already did that.
We had lunch in there.
Well,
Have our boots on.
I think staff still, Mr. Sturgeon, correct, we still need some direction on where we're going. Right now, OUC has told you they're serving as a project manager, and I guess they are, at this point, willing to continue serving as the project manager and provide the additional information that you've talked about tonight so that you can get to a point of making a determination. And that would be the first thing. So, I don't know, Mr. Sturgeon.
Councilmember Thiene.
Were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I'll give my opinion, and I guess we can go down the line. You know, I felt like we needed some more information. I now understand the constraints due to the building, and they can't get in there and test it in the hearing. The building official's recommendation, I think we all want clean closure. I agree with Keith on Mr. Trace on the scanning. I'd talk with the city manager about that. I don't know. I'm sure there's some technology that can scan it and maybe, you know, preserve that for the future. But based on the recommendation of the building official, and I was in there without a respirator, I would say I would support taking the building down.
And before, like, so, sorry, if that happens, I guess do we go out to a bid with someone, they do an assessment of what the cost would be to actually demolish the building, and that comes back and we have a public hearing about it, or is this just?
We're just giving direction.
Okay.
That's all we're doing.
I just want to know next steps of, if we give that direction, then what comes back to us and when's the next time we see it?
Yes, we're not talking about demolition right now. We'd have to put that out for bid,
Okay.
get somebody to demolish the building so they could do their additional testing. The other question in hand is, right now, OUC has been paying for this studies and things like that. They paid for one from Tetra Tech and this one from Geosyntec. And again, we're talking a very expensive proposition. So do we want to look at who's going to pay for it? How do we pay? If we pay for it from a city perspective, there's a few grants we're eligible for, but it's only $300,000 or $400,000. 10% of probably what the cost is going to be. So if we had to pay for it, it's going to have to come out of our reserve contingency.
Well, I sort of think we need to pursue the option of, what is OUC willing to do and what would that entail contractually?
Terry Torrance, OUC. So just because there's been so many moving parts, I haven't really kind of brought all of this up to you guys to talk about it in more detail, but, and I intend to do that in the next couple of days, because probably what is going to happen is we're going to be bringing to you a request for an extension on the interlocal. And in that process, I'll go through the process of explaining why we would like an extension. It's not just related to the generation site cleanup or other things that we've talked about. And so OUC has a proposal, and part of that proposal is that we would fund up to $6 million for the city for this site, for this cleanup. And so the upside of that, and the way that that contract has been drafted, and it's in draft form, is that the more cost-effective we are in cleaning up the site, the remaining balance gets transferred to the city for the city's use, whether it's on that site or elsewhere.
Mr. Mazares.
And the one question we had, and I think it's important for the council to know that, and it goes to Mr. Trace's question. I presume that OUC's position is that if we go with that, as Ms. Torrance just pointed out, that they essentially would be the project manager and they would complete it all. So all
Yes.
those issues regarding public bidding as to demolition, all that would all be taken care of in that scenario
Right.
by OUC. So
Yes.
the council wouldn't see it again after that point. Basically, we'd enter into an agreement with OUC. If that's the path you go, OUC would complete the project, and it wouldn't come back to the council until such time as you decide what you want to do with the property after it's all been cleaned up.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just address that just really quickly. Part of the process would be that we have a meeting, a quarterly meeting, OUC and the city of St. Cloud, as part of our interlocal agreement. And part of our administration of this would be, we would be reporting to you every 3 months. And I do that anyway, but I've been kind of thinking through a lot of communication issues lately with, I feel like I've not done a good job of explaining some of the stuff that OUC does in our community and some of the investments we've made in our resiliency and generation. And so, and I've actually talked to the city manager about this, but there were so many pieces and parts moving on, I couldn't try to kind of wrap my mind around it all at one time. So post this, what I was planning on doing was taking our quarterly meeting report and giving it as a council report so all of you guys can see where we're at. Obviously, if we have any questions, and if you have any concerns, that we're acting as your project manager, but we're not doing it in a vacuum. We're doing it at the will of the city. So, you'll get regular reports back. You'll get a financial status report. We'll have a work in progress report. So it won't be that, you guys are all just wondering what's going on out there. That's generally the plan, and if you'd like to have more frequent updates, I'm certainly happy to provide them. Most of you guys know how to find me.
Well, but I wanted to make sure you understood, to get back to Mr. Trace's point, that under that scenario, the city would not be entering into these agreements with the folks that are doing the work on site.
Yeah, we would go out for
That would be, so you wouldn't see those contracts and those agreements. You'd get, obviously, routine updates,
But we would, if we move forward down that path, we would have a public hearing about the agreement to clean up, and then that's when we can hash out a lot of
yes,
stuff.
well, you're not making, that would,
So there's more public hearings on our side.
Well, the direction one of the directions we're looking for tonight is that a path that the council wants to pursue at a future council meeting, when you would make that decision after we've been able to work through the agreement with OUC, and bring it back to you in format that you can consider that or any other options to fund the necessary cleanup.
Well, I believe the magnitude of this project is going to be far more than we certainly anticipate now with all the unknowns. And I think we're going to need to take advantage of every partnership that we can to be able to clean this thing up and to clean it up in a timely manner, as timely as possible. So I certainly think this is the direction we need to move in. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. I think you and I spoke yesterday about, about an hour and a half, probably. Looks like you're willing, OUC is willing to step up to the plate, about $6 million in, right?
Yeah.
All right, so if we do the, just demolition and get it torn down less than, say, 3 million, 4 million, let's say, and get it cleaned up, if there's $2 million left over, you said we could apply that to anywhere else.
That would be part of the agreement, right? So
You and I had talked about.
Well,
Yeah.
if I may, the proposal, and we can get into this when it gets involved with it, one of the submissions from OEC was that, as you know, there's a business development fund that was created when the agreement was entered into with OUC back in, and that fund is supposed to be used for business development and generation of customers, so for the electric utilities. So the proposal was that any money that was not spent out of the $6 million figure that was mentioned would be put into that fund, which essentially the city has discretion to use for limited purposes. That's the way it's written right now. And basically it's economic development and generate business.
You can always change that too.
Well, that's why I said that. If you remember, that's the proposal they've submitted. We haven't, if it's going to be up to the city council, what the final version of that agreement looks like, if you want to go in that direction.
But you and I had talked about, because, I'm looking at Stevens Plantation, and, we've got 100 and some acres there. It's centralized. It's the closest facility to use anything that the city would ever want to have right there.
Right.
City Hall's, like I said, it's full. It's no more place to put other people here. So, if you wanted to put an annex there, or you want a City Hall annex, or you wanted to build City Hall there and make this an annex, or whatever you want to do. It's down the road that you've got 100 acres right there, that if we can get some money from OUC, if you're stepping up to the plate to $6 million, and it's because we're going to knock it down, I think that would be the cheapest way for us to do it, and the least, and quickest to do. I think we could put some of that money towards Stevens Plantation and keeps that area there. It could be ballparks, you could put trails, you could do anything you want to do there.
Yeah, I think that would be at the discretion of the city, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
But you and I talked about that. You and I said, I think you even said that's one of the smartest things to keep that right there than it is to move and sell it.
Yeah, well, when we were talking, I think that you were concerned about the fact that it was on the tax rolls and it was a burden to the city for a long
Well,
period of time.
get it off
and
the
so-
tax roll,
right.
yes, it
And
would.
then, so that was kind of like the conversation.
That's a smart
yeah.
thing there,
Yeah.
yes. And you and I talked about that too, yes. I appreciate that, thank you.
Yes, of course.
So do we have a consensus that we're looking at certainly a cleanup
Yes, sir.
option with and working with OUC to hopefully accomplish that, and we're looking at the demolition of the building at this point in light of all the challenges associated with it. Mr. Sturgeon?
Yes, Mayor. If that's the direction of the council, we'll certainly take care of that. I also wanted to let you know that our Economic Development Manager, Antoinette Forbes, had actually done a short presentation on, what does it look like afterwards, what we can do for redevelopment. So if we can do that now, or we can do it at a later date. It's up to the discretion of the council.
Well, you don't need it now.
Later.
Yeah, later's easy.
Okay.
Is it easy, ready?
It's much easier.
So are we in agreement on that then? Mr. Sturgeon?
Yes, I just want to read some very good news I just got from our lobbyist. The governor announced today that the city of St. Cloud was awarded $2 million for repair of damaged pipes on Illinois Avenue through the Rebuild Florida grant. Additionally, we made it through the appropriations in both the Senate and the House. Have been appropriated funds for Mutter Road, Seaplane Base, and Chisholm Park.
Wow.
So that's still subject to the governor's approval, but we did get the grant, the $2 million grant that our staff worked really hard on with the DEO.
Cool.
Good job.
Winner, guys. Thank you. Do we have a presentation?
We're gonna wait on.
Would you, I think, wait?
Do you want to wait, or do you want it now?
Would like to wait.
I don't know if everybody's here waiting to see it. I don't
I
know.
think staff wants to wait.
I think we want to.
Aw, let her do her presentation.
Sure.
Let's
do the
go.
Presentation.
Let's go.
Yes,
Sure.
Yes. Move.
I try.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were coming up here.
Let me just start it up. You've already seen, I'm Andre Anderson, Community Development Director. You've already seen this matrix, and what I did was kind of added to it, and also tried to encapsulate some of the qualitative dollars that was being discussed earlier. And so what we've added is basically the building cost, and I won't belabor the point because this was designed to kind of explain the magnitude of what it would cost to, as you see, the cost going up to keep the building even with a conditional closure, just because of the uncertainties with the recurring costs that you would be subject to. What we also wanted to highlight, and Trina will go into a little more detail about this, is what is it that we want to use this building for in the future if we were to retain it. Of course, that conversation is kind of out the window now, because that's why we said we would do it later, because we sort of geared our presentation to explain why it makes sense to demolish the building based on the restrictions that would occur based on limiting the future use of the building. Because what we, and I'll just cut to the chase, what we would have, ultimately recommended for this facility is something that would generate economic development dollars and would also be encourage entrepreneurship in the city. One of the things that Antoinette has been very focused on is maintaining the businesses in the city and nurturing and encouraging small business development. And so limiting the site through restrictions would tend to work against that ability, because for one, you would not be able to have the building as it stands to be able to have a food grade quality. In other words, you'd be very restricted to non-entertainment, non-residential, non-retail, non-food and beverage type businesses, just because of the fact that the building is, as we already said, is contaminated. But just to kind of run through real quick, as you know where the site is, the current land use is public institutional, which is because it's a public facility. And the zoning is CBD1, which is Central Business District 2, CBD2, I'm sorry, which is Central Business District 2. So it's part of the downtown district, allows for a variety of residential and also retail business downtown uses. That's what the building looks like. This was sort of a more historic image of the building. And as you can see, what you have there is part of the original building to the left, and then the added portion to the right where you have those stacks. And there was also adjustments made to the building that added that exterior portion. The original facade that you see there has Palladian windows, which are interesting and attractive. However, the historical integrity of the building has already been adjusted and modified several times, and so has not retained its historical integrity at this point. And so that's one of the other reasons why, if you do want to recapture the original building, as Deputy Mayor Matheny and Councilmember Trace mentioned, is to laser the building, and so we can then preserve the architecture through laser and then recreate it in a fashion that would allow us the greatest flexibility for future development. So I'm going to turn it over to Antoinette so she can just kind of walk you through some demographics and quickly talk about some of the demand that would occur or are able to accomplish for this site.
Good evening, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development and Special Projects Manager. In the interest of brevity, I may speak a little bit quickly, but I know it's getting later in the evening. So, just so you know, this particular picture we pulled from CoStar. I feel that it's important to note that because the city very recently purchased this software. It is a commercial real estate database program that pulls from hundreds of resources that allows us to get real-time data. That being said, it's very imperative when we look at economic development and not so much of the traditional sense, and I've said this out and about many times, in that a lot of times people think of economic development all about business attraction. How do we get the next big business to come into our city? But for me, it's more important about business retention and expansion. How do we grow from within? That helps us be able to have economic sustainability. And economic sustainability is all about how we produce high-wage, high-quality jobs, how do we create entrepreneurship, how do we help increase the tax base, how do we impact effectively workforce development. And then we also look at, in terms of how to reuse and repurpose our existing assets in order to make it more qualitative to the end user. So what you'll see here and what I'm about to give you are a lot of data, and hopefully you think it's as interesting as I do. So in economic development, we tend to look at data because those are how we find our industry trends. So these are the traffic counts for that area within the 1 mile radius and then a little bit without. So you'll see that the traffic counts are substantially lower, particularly in that area. However, if you look on 192, they have well over quadruple. And so the reason we look at traffic counts is transportation is a great indicator of economic activity. It tells you how much money is coming to, or in this case, leaving the area. The location and development is very heavily influenced when businesses are looking for site selection opportunities, whether we're looking at businesses who are growing within the city or outside businesses looking to relocate in. Also, we look at it in transportation in terms of international trade. The access to be able to move logistically to and from, to be able to transport your goods and services is a huge economic indicator. Here we see the population information for that area. So I want you to note in yellow, that's within the 1 mile radius. And then when they say Greene County, they really mean not necessarily the county specifically, but within the region. And so that population is representative of how quickly we are growing. You'll see that we have, so I did my own research and saw that our population grew 2.9% since last year, which means we have exponential growth. We have the population and then we have the household growth. So that's the differentiation between the two, where the population represents the individual numbers and the household is obviously within the entire house. The median household income at this point is around $56,000, which grew from $50,600 3 years ago for the city. So not just with that 1 mile radius, but the city overall. So that tells you that while our economy itself is booming, so is our population. This slide here shows you the influx of residential. So I showed that we had over 4,600 housing units in the past 9 years. That tells you that people not only are, the population is growing, but also we are growing in capacity. And so when we look at that, we also look at conversely, not just residential, but also commercial development. So since 2016, we've had more than 141,000 square feet of commercial development. That means there's a huge impact to our existing infrastructure, obviously, but not just infrastructure, but it also looks at our employment numbers. So when you look over to the right bottom and it shows that we have a 95% employment rate, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what's called FTE or full-time equivalent. So just because people are gainfully employed, that does not mean that that so-called $56,000 average wage is indicative of one job, which means that people are working harder in order to live in a particular area. next would be, again, more population information. And it just shows the median household income that's within the 1 mile radius. So if you look at some of these numbers, you'll see that the population not only is growing exponentially, but just within that mile, that 14,722 is in the next 5 years. And more data. So this one here, the population, once again, is the numbers of individuals and not necessarily by household. The city increased its square footage by 57%, and it's also to be noted that the past growth within the last 9 years is at 22%. There's an estimated additional 17% within the next 5 years. So this is the part that is what we call the meat and potatoes of it. I think there's animation. Yeah. There we go. So this will show you what, obviously we have what's called leakage. Leakage means money that's leaving the area in order to provide those goods and services. So the fact that those numbers are so low is telling you that people, while these areas are needed, these particular products or goods, people are leaving in order to obtain those. It's imperative to note that while we do have some of these providers in the area, it's not meeting the capacity. So in fact, St. Cloud lists as one of the lowest areas for revenue per capita in retail. We have a combined business revenue in terms of clothing specifically at $341,000 to $360,000, which means of all the apparel in the area, that is what they're averaging in terms of revenue, which is substantially low. Our most underserved markets listed are family clothing, accessories, and entertainment. There's also the reading materials, but more specifically the food away from home, which would be your restaurants and your takeout. Okay. So this is another one that I think is extremely indicative of the need to have a diversification in target industries. The medical supplies, you know, that's something that would be a tier 2 type business that we would look to attract in order to serve as a feeder pattern into, you know, the Neo City, into St. Cloud Regional. We need to have service providers that can directly access those goods and services. It's also imperative, I think, to mention that in November, we did a business survey where we basically tried to find out more information for some of our registered businesses. So we have over 1,300 registered businesses in the city. Of that, we had contact information for a little under 1,000, and so we reached out to them and found that predominantly 38% that responded were in some form of service-related activity. You know, that would be your auto service, your hair and nail, your car washes, etc. And then 35% were home-based. So in terms of how we read that data, we read there is untapped markets that may be looking for possible expansion as they look to grow.
Missing a slide.
We are missing a slide. So I'll just tell you what that missing slide says. So what we look at in terms for that building, the purpose of, oh, thank you. The purpose of retrieving that data was to find out what would be the highest and best use. How do we look at what's most advantageous for the city so that we can have that long-term growth, we can have long-term economic sustainability, we can have diversification in our resources and diversification in our industries, and we can also look at how we can encourage entrepreneurship. So when we look for how do we answer all those different categories, we see what is the untapped market, where is the money, where is that money going, and then how can we bring it here. So we look at that potential site as a further expansion of the downtown in terms of offering entertainment opportunities, retail, mixed use, and what have you. So that was basically a very short but quickly spoken idea of how that site looks, what are the economics of it, and then how we can see us moving into the future.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council? Very insightful. Thank you very much. Do we have anything else from council? We have nothing else on our agenda. We are adjourned. Thank you.